Okay, good morning. Welcome back. This is Geography 10, Lecture 9. Today we're going to talk about germs and the Great Dying. I want to talk about Charles Mann's article 1491, which you read. We're going to finish up with a discussion of terra preta, which comes up in Charles Mann's piece. Here's the update. The readings for today, Chapter 9 from Crosby plus Mann's article. For Thursday, I'd like you to finish Crosby, Chapters 11 and 12. A week from today, we will have a review session in lecture. What I mean by that is I would like you to come to class next Tuesday with questions that you would like us to discuss. By that I mean mainly me to discuss. At the beginning of class next Tuesday, I will ask you to raise your hand, tell me the question you're interested in. I will write the questions on the board or maybe type them onto the PowerPoint screen. And once we've collected the questions that you have, we'll do a quick straw poll. You'll all be allowed to vote for the 2 or 3 questions that you are most interested in hearing discussed. And then we will sort the questions accordingly. And we'll start with the ones that the most people want to talk about, and we'll work our way through and see how far we get. Typically, I end up with 10 or 12 questions, and we usually are able to talk about all of them, or very nearly all of them. So your job is to come to class on Tuesday with a question or 2. Okay? I also would like you to read pages 32 to 41 from the Atlas for Tuesday. I also would like you to consider bringing your Atlas with you to lecture on Thursday. I do not have that many things to say further beyond today about Crosby, and part of the lecture, and maybe much of the lecture on Thursday, will actually be about the Atlas. I also plan to talk a little bit about climate change and the Arctic. Okay? As I said, there'll be a review session next Tuesday. There will not be class on Thursday the 4th. And the midterm will take place in class on the 9th, 2 weeks from today. I will talk more on Thursday about the format of the midterm. Okay? Are there any questions? All right. Here we go. Crosby, page 196. It was their germs, not these imperialists themselves, for all their brutality and callousness, that were chiefly responsible for sweeping aside the indigents and opening the Neo-Europes to demographic takeover. So this is the piece we have been working towards the last couple lectures. The idea that it was the immune systems, the relative immune systems, or the immunological condition of the Europeans as compared to the immunological condition of the Native Americans that made possible the Neo-Europeans' takeover of parts of the New World. Everyone comfortable with that argument? Everyone make it through the reading for today? Anyone have questions about how this happened? Or doubts about whether it happened? The point here is that a class of diseases, which Diamond at least calls crowd diseases, evolved from domesticated animals, or more specifically, evolved from the combination of humans and domesticated animals living together in crowds, so to speak. So high densities of both people and animals, domesticated livestock, living in proximity, close proximity with each other. That reminds me, actually, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you guys about grass. What does it take to keep an animal domesticated? Any idea? A stick? Is that the best way to keep an animal domesticated? Yeah. Have them depend on you. Okay. What kind of things do you have to do to keep them dependent on you? Yeah. Feed them. What if they eat grass that grows by itself? What if you don't have a way to build a fence? Yeah. Herd them with dogs. Okay. What if once you've got them where you want them? What do you do then? Yeah. Well, I'm just talking about day-to-day, not so much those key moments when you actually control their reproduction. I'm talking about if your job is to tend these animals and keep them domesticated. And the reason this is important is because we're actually talking about feral animals, right? Or feral, depending on how you want to pronounce it. What's a feral animal? Yeah. A domesticated animal that has gone wild, which is to say that a lot of these domesticated animals actually can survive on their own without human assistance, at least given certain environmental circumstances. They may or may not be able to reproduce and persist as a population in the wild, but many of them have they're perfectly capable, and that's part of what makes them so useful, right? Is you don't necessarily have to tend after their every need every minute of the day. They're much easier to take care of than, say, small children. You know, the movie Grass, the focus is on the migration, and so yes, it's this huge, concerted, lengthy, difficult process, right? It takes a lot of human work, but once you're there and you're hanging out with your animals on the plains of Iran, what does that look like? What does that work actually consist of? Is it work? That's another question to ask. In a lot of ways, what it takes to keep an animal domesticated is simply to keep it used to you, to keep it accustomed to you. Physical co-presence. This is something that social scientists have actually, believe it or not, wrestled with. The question of what is the nature of the work that pastoralists do. And there's sort of 2 trains of thought, 2 schools of thought. One is pastoralists actually don't do much of anything. They walk out with their animals to wherever they're going to graze that day, and they sit down, and they sit. And that's not work at all. It's the easiest life on the face of the earth. It's the original affluent society, according to some anthropologists. And then on the other side is the school of thought that says, no, these are actually people who never stop working. They're 24/7 all the time because they never know where their animals might go. They can't leave them alone for a minute. They have to track them through storms and so on, keep them alive in the face of predators and things like that. All of this is to say that the category work, which we're accustomed to very easily defining and distinguishing from leisure, doesn't really work very well in the context of these pastoralists. Have any of you ever had any interactions with feral animals? Yeah? Cats? Feral cats? What are they like?
Well, I live by a river, and there's a lot of cats that live in the river area.
There are a lot of cats that live by the river.
I'm assuming used to be domesticated.
Uh-huh.
Now completely on their own survival their own.
And what are they like? Do they interact with you? No.
They're afraid.
They're afraid of humans. Anyone else? Anyone ever encountered a feral pig? Yeah, what was it like? Scary? What did it do? It tried to get your food. You were camping. Did it succeed? Did you have to use a stick? You had a 6-foot tall guy go like this. And the pig ran away? The pig didn't stand his ground and threaten to charge? No. Huh, anyone else? What's scarier, a wild animal or a feral animal? Feral? Who said that? And why do you say that?
I feel like I've also had experience with feral cats, and they seem to want to attack.
They seem to want to attack.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've had experience with wild animals, they kind of keep that off.
Okay, your typical wild animal is actually more scared of humans than your typical feral animal. That's been my experience anyway. Feral pigs are actually quite dangerous. You should definitely watch out for them. And if you ever have the misfortune of meeting a feral cow, stay a long way away from that animal. I'll tell you later in the lecture about some feral cows that I was knew. But we'll get back to that. Okay. So physical co-presence actually is key to maintaining domestication in animals, or at least in preventing them from becoming feral. So now back to crowd diseases. This is a list of some of them: measles, tuberculosis, and smallpox, which evolved from cattle; flu, influenza, which evolved from pigs and ducks; pertussis, from pigs and dogs; and malaria from birds. There are, of course, new ones that we could add to this list, right, from just recent years, and we'll come back to that as well. But the point is that these diseases evolved in Eurasia. We know from the behavior of these diseases and the genetic makeup of these diseases, these germs, that they are the result of mutations in the germs as they have moved back and forth between human and animal hosts. And we also know that these are diseases that cannot persist and therefore cannot continue to evolve unless there is a certain density of hosts for them to move among or within. Okay? If there's not enough people and enough animals in proximity so that the germ can move from one to another and back and forth between humans and animal hosts, it will die out. They will die out, and that will be that. So this issue of density is critical to these diseases' evolution, hence crowd diseases. And the take-home point here is that these germs evolved in Eurasia. They had not evolved in the New World. And therefore, upon arrival, the germs were able to sweep through the human populations and, to some degree, the wildlife populations of the New World. And the humans, the Native Americans, did not have any immunological resistance to these diseases and died at horrific rates from these diseases. And that this essentially cleared the continents of the vast majority of their human population, actually ahead of the arrival of most of the Europeans. Any questions? So here's a summary of how this works. Natural selection and germs. A bacterium or a virus must have a host. It can't live by itself. It's got to be in somebody, in some living organism. It must also reproduce and spread. It must find new hosts. Why is that? Why must it keep moving? Why can't it just hang out in one host? Yeah, go ahead. All right, eventually the host is either going to die, in which case you got to find a new host, or the host is going to become immune to it, is going to fight it off. And your immune system will defeat this germ, this bacterium or this virus, and it will no longer be a suitable host. All the while, it's constantly mutating, just like any other living organism. And its success as an organism persisting through time, its evolutionary success, depends on what it does to its hosts, whether it kills them, whether it triggers immune response, how quickly it does that, obviously. It depends on the mutations, and it depends on the density of the host species. Obviously, it can move from one person to another, but then that next host is going to either die or develop immune resistance, right? And then it's got to move to another, and another, and another, and another. And the immune resistance will persist in each person for a period of time, sometimes for the rest of their lives, sometimes for a period of many years. So that germ can't come back to that person for a while. If it makes its way through the entire population of hosts, potential hosts, and they all either die or become immune, and then it has no other persons to go on to, then it's done, right? Now, granted, humans have a way of interacting with each other. And maybe you manage to make a trip. You hitch onto somebody who's going to the next town, and you find a whole new batch of potential hosts that you can spread that way. So it's not just a question of the numbers, it's a question of the density, the distribution of people across the landscape in relationship to the temporal scale, the time periods over which the immune response is occurring and the bacterium or virus is mutating. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want to introduce the idea of threshold effects here. The idea that as host densities rise, you reach a threshold in terms of numbers of, say, people in proximity to each other, or people in interaction with each other, right? Where natural selection has a qualitatively different outcome in terms of the germ. In other words, it's not like the more people, the more germs. It's actually that you get to some point where there are enough people to sustain a germ, a virus or a bacterium, and without having that many people, it would simply die off and it wouldn't persist at all. So you actually get a completely different outcome because of a certain critical mass, so to speak, of the people in the potential host population, the numbers, right? So one example is measles, which according to the public health experts, the epidemiologists, requires roughly 500,000 people in interaction with each other to persist at all. If you don't have that many people in a sort of common germ space, measles will run its course and dissipate, and it will not be able to persist. So the take home here is that high densities of livestock, high densities of people create new microbes, brand new microbes that would not exist otherwise. Are there any questions? Obviously, in understanding what a host population is, you have to think very carefully about mobility. So it's not simply a question of the number of people in one place, the number of people who actually live in one city, for example. It's a function both of the numbers and of the mobility, how quickly they move around, how far they move around, in relation to the life cycle of the microbes. So if you have two cities of 500,000 people each, but they only interact with each other, say, once every 10 years. Maybe there's some crazy sports event that happens every 10 years. Otherwise, they never have any physical interaction with each other at all. That's a different situation from an immunological point of view than if they send emissaries back and forth every year or two, or every week, or if, in fact, they routinely travel back and forth and trade with each other, for example, right? So greater mobility, in terms of speed, frequency, and distance, effectively makes host populations larger. Speed is also important, right? If it takes you 6 months to get from the one city to the other, that's long enough that if you leave town and you are carrying some germ, you're sick, chances are by the time you get there, your immune system will have dealt with that germ and disposed of it, and you will no longer, I mean, this is the point of quarantine, right? You quarantine a person or an animal for a period of time so that whatever it is that they're carrying goes away, and they then can't pass it on to the people in the new place that they're going to. So the fact that we now can travel around the world in a day, or to the other side of the world in 16 hours on an airplane or something like that, has very significant effects for the ways that germs can move and infect new populations. In a sense, what we now have is a situation in which the entire human population, with perhaps the exception of some very remote locations that see very, very little interaction with the outside world, functions as one gigantic host population for diseases. Whereas 200 years ago, it might take you 6 months to make that trip, and that in turn would have very different effects on the movement of germs. Does that all make sense? Okay. So, and you get this, I think you can get a feeling for this reading 1491 as well as reading Crosby. The circumstances in the New World were sort of perfect for cataclysmic epidemics, pandemics, right? You had initially a very small number of people traveling from Europe and landing on the edges of this continent, these two continents. Many of them probably, if they were sick when they left Europe, had gotten over it by the time they got to Europe. But even on a boat, right? One person leaves port in Europe sick and gets better, but the germ moves to another person on the boat, and maybe another person. And by the time you get to the New World, it's still alive. The germ is still going strong. It's got at least one host, and that host gets off the boat. Those germs, at that point, are capable of moving actually faster than the person, so to speak, right? Because as soon as that person has contact with a person on land, say a group of people on land, and those people start moving, and those people have interactions with other people, and those people move, and then you got to think about the animals that might also serve as hosts for some of these diseases. There's a discussion in Man about the pigs, right? That De Soto took through the southeastern United States, what's now the southeastern United States, and the possibility, the likelihood that these pigs actually carried smallpox with them, and because these pigs, at least some of them went feral, even if they weren't feral, they probably spent a great deal of time wandering around on their own, and they could spread smallpox in such a way that it actually could arrive at an Indian community that had never seen a European. Now, there also was a discussion about how the Native Americans likely responded to these diseases, right? Smallpox, to take one example, is a really grisly, miserable, tortuous, disgusting way to die, right? It turns you into something of a monster, physically. And if you had never seen this disease, and suddenly people in your community started dying from it, and you had no idea where it had come from or what to do, what would you do? The first time, let's say the first person gets sick, what do? You call your healthcare provider. No, of course you not. What action do you do, right? Chances are you do whatever it is that you normally do in response to disease, right? Which might involve collecting plants, consulting with somebody who's known to understand how to treat diseases, right? You probably put them in bed and administer these cures of various kinds. Who knows what they are? And then what do you do when like 20 more people get this disease in the following 2 weeks? What do you do at that point? Say 20 more people get it and 16 of them die in 2 weeks. What do? You get the fuck out of town, right? You run. You take everything you can, everybody you've got, you get the hell out of Dodge. Where do you go? Someplace nearby where you've got some friends who've got some food, right? Somebody who can take care of you or offer you, you get moving. And what do? In effect, you spread the disease. And the next, very likely the same dynamic plays out at the next village. And so on and so forth, right? The numbers are subject to a lot of debate, right? That's really what the Article 1491 is about, is scholars' recent efforts to make sense of some of these numbers and debate what they should be, how to arrive at them, how solid they are or aren't, that kind of thing. But we do know of at least many instances where mortality rates were upwards of 90%, right? And that could happen very quickly with a single outbreak, at least at reasonably smaller scales. But you have to remember that there were multiple diseases that were all brand new, and that there were waves of these things. And that, as he put, I mean, I think the summary he offers is that, according to some of the scholars in this debate, in 130 years, 95% of the population of the Americas died from these diseases.